Welcome to the Generation Elevation podcast, a conscious, connected platform for those who are ready to manifest their dream life. I'm your host, Elise Riley, a former PT, now motivational speaker, igniting empowerment and transformation all across the globe. Here at Generation Elevation, we are committed to bringing you the most inspiring guests who will share their stories, wisdom, and advice to help you progress closer to living a life of your own terms.
Welcome back to another episode of Generation Elevation. Now, today, I am joined by a very special guest. Now, this is actually my first in-person interview over here in London, which I'm extremely excited about. Now, a few months ago, I was going for a walk in London, and you know, when you're wanting to get your hair done and you just move to a new town, it's like, it's a make or break, right? Like, you get into a routine of seeing the same people over and over again. So it's really important, especially to me, that whoever I then went to get my hair done with was going to be like my regular place that I would go. So I tuned into my intuition. I was like, okay, intuition, guides, okay, where do I need to go? And I just hear Valentino. I was like, what is this place? So I look it up and I wasn't really sure. And it turns out that it was something that I would be walking past a couple of days a week on my walk. So I booked it in. I was like, all right, I'm getting it done. And I go get my hair done. Obviously, it looks amazing. I'm super happy with it. But the best part about that day was I overhear a conversation with this man, and he's one of the workers there, and he's talking to the clients. And it was one of the most beautiful conversations, and it really resonated with the work that I actually teach here on the Generation Elevation podcast. Turns out that this was Valentino himself. And I remember in my head, while I was getting my beautiful head massage, I was like, all right, I know that when I'm leaving here today, I'm going to be talking to this man, and I want him on my podcast because I truly believe what he has to say is really special. And so, with my absolute pleasure, it is an honor to introduce you to him today. So, Valentino, welcome to the Generation Elevation podcast.
Wow, Lisa, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here with you. Anything I can say to help, I'm here for you.
Yeah, let's do this. So I was speaking to you a little bit before we did press play. Now, I would love for you to share, like, how did you get to here today? What are the key main moments in your life that have shaped you to who you are, just so the listeners can get an insight into your life and how you've come to own this beautiful salon and where you're at right now?
Well, that's interesting journey. So I definitely have always had an inquiring mind. I've always been interested in finding out how everything works. As a child, I took everything apart and had to work out how it came apart, and then therefore how to put it back together again. So that's quite an interesting development. When you start being like that, then everything you look at and everything you hear, you want to know how it works, you know? So it wasn't long as a teenager I was taking engines apart because how on earth does this car move? And the same thing which led me to getting a music scholarship. I heard a piece of music played and I thought, how the heck do they do that? And when I discovered it was just one guitar, I had to learn how to do that. And 3 years later, I played that piece and got a music scholarship. So
Wow.
The important thing is that I think you do need to walk around with your eyes wide open and try and absorb with curiosity everything that comes to you. Sorry, I just get a little bit emotional because my head, thinks about, there are a lot of people you meet who actually achieve that in their life. Sadly, most of the people you meet don't. And I think it begins with a lack of curiosity and an augmentation of fear comes through into people when they don't get to jump in the water, or to have that go at making something better, or picking up an instrument and making that sound with courage and the approach of, I want to know how to do this. If they miss that boat, they keep missing the boat. Unfortunately, if you're on the edge here and the water's in front of you, you'll either dive or you don't. Can't say, I'll think about it and do it later. That's not how the world works. And I think that lack of courage is the thing that I would teach people the most, to avoid waiting until you feel you have the courage. It just doesn't happen that way. Courage is to do what needs to be done as it presents itself. As soon as you start introducing thoughts, you're screwed. And the reason that is because what I've learned now, by the age I am, is quite simple, actually. When I ask you about your thoughts of how you see the world, if I ask you actually, how many of your thoughts that you think did you think? How many of them did you actually think of?
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
You get me? And you'll find that actually when you stop to think, you didn't think any of them. So the difficulty is when you're very, very young, you don't realize this sort of thing. So all the noise that's in your head that you think is you thinking and how you feel things, it isn't. It's just literally a biological reaction to the world around you. And you get so full of this noise that some people are lucky that the noise helps them jump, and the other people are just too petrified to jump. And they stay there all their lives, and they create more and more reasons to justify why they're never going to jump.
I remember for me, in my journey of becoming more conscious to my thoughts, was this moment where I was literally like going for walks 3 hours a day, listening to podcasts on double speed, trying to figure out like what was wrong with me. I had tremendous anxiety and fear at the time.
Yeah.
You know, and if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you'd know my story around this. And I remember starting to meditate and read into personal development, and Eckhart Tolle, the words in his book, A New Earth, really struck me. And that was, you are not your thoughts, but you are the awareness of your thoughts. So when I started to be more conscious of when I was spiraling into those thoughts that I thought were mine, I realized actually, no, like I'm just witnessing that my mind is just chattering right now. And actually that isn't who I am. And I am the thing that witnesses these things come through. And I am actually this being that underneath all the chatter, all the fear, is just pure love. And I actually recently heard someone say that fear catches those who stand still. So if you're stuck in that fear, you're going to get stuck even more so. And so if you have the courage, like you said, to just take the leap of faith and trust your heart will catch you. Your heart is always right. Your mind will try to protect you because that is its job. But if you trust your heart, like you cannot go wrong. It's the initiation of courage that will build you to be in your strength for that thing that you're about to do.
Yeah, that's right. But the problem is that fear is there for a reason to protect you.
Of course, yeah.
But it also stops you doing things, right? And you need to get enough good stuff in there to push out all the fears. So there's no room for the fears because you're too busy. You ever notice when you're really busy, I don't know, cleaning the house or something, you don't think of any of this negative stuff, right? So it's how do you get in that mode all the time? And you brought up the concept of the idea of what love is.
Yeah.
What is love for you?
For me, like it is this feeling in your heart. It's warm, and it is, word that comes to mind is natural. It is who we are energetically without resistance. Like I believe it's just our natural state of being without fear. Does that make sense?
But it's interesting you just use the word energetic because energetic is an action. Okay? So love is actually the action of wanting or doing good for another. So if you live as love in action, there's no room. You don't need to think. You don't need to make choices because everything that comes up, right action is self-evident. The only thing, the alternative to right action is indifference. It's that why should I I mean, I'm not that religious, but if you want to use the idea of original sin, that's what original sin was. Why should I? Wasn't it? So that's indifference to knowing what you should have done. You decided to not do it. And so whether I'm with you or with anyone, we're either in a state of action, doing the right thing for one another, sharing that moment in a positive way, or I have to employ indifference. Why should I? And the more you do that in your life as a youngster, and I notice it more and more with young people, the fear stops them.
Yeah.
It says that, why should I?
I was just about to ask that, yeah.
And then they do more and more of that. And then when something presents itself that they might be able to be passionate about, the fear element of protection drops in and the love in action goes out the window. They don't get the opportunity to ever actually make that leap.
Yeah. Do you think that, like, because whether it's young people of today or even people that are middle-aged or plus, right, if they have spent many months, days, years, etc., practicing fear, obviously they're going to be really good at it. So when that opportunity does present itself, because they've so well practiced in fear, even if there's like that element of, oh, maybe I should do that, it's like, but why should I? Why do I believe that I could possibly do something like that? And then you just go back to what you've been originally practicing.
Yeah. And you become fixated on the idea, oh, what if it goes wrong? Well, you know what? To get where I am today, I could give you a list of 1,000 things and nearly all of them were wrong. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
You've got to be prepared to get things wrong.
Yeah.
I've been working on an app for 5 years.
Wow.
Where I know what I'm doing is right and we have got it right, but I've made hundreds and hundreds of corrections over and over again to get to the point of it being right. But if you're afraid to get things wrong, if you're afraid to dip your foot in the water and have a go, well, we stay in history, don't we? You know, it's like Sunak the other day, you know, our Prime Minister, he's talking about new politics. Guy on the BBC, what's he saying? He's saying, but for 13 years you've done... It's like, well, who gives a monkeys about yesterday? We realised that whatever we've been doing didn't work. What are we doing now? Let's get on with it. And that's what you have to do. That is love in action. Move it forward.
Yeah, you know, when you speak about this, what comes to mind is the TV show Moneyball, right? And I'm pretty sure it's Brad Pitt, but don't quote me on that. But essentially it's about baseball, American baseball. And what they've done is the club that hasn't got a lot of money has lost their great players to other teams that do have money. Yeah. And so they can't afford to make their team better with the players that they invest in. So Brad Pitt is sitting there in a room full of people who have been around for a really long time. And back then, this is based off a true story. They speak about, okay, well, they're picking players based on biases. Oh, yeah, he's a right-hander, so he's going to be good, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily statistics. Statistics wasn't a thing then. And this movie is all about Brad Pitt discovering this very, very smart mathematician guy who he then hires, which is seen as a risk to the rest of the team. They're like, why are you bringing this guy in? What are all these numbers and averages and statistics? Which would now be seen as that's normal. That's what any sporting team would do. Yeah. But back then, they would have looked at this and gone, nah, like you're going to ruin our side. So basically, he got rid of the best player on the team and hired 3 other cheaper players. And based off these statistics, that would outdo this better player. And eventually this became the way of baseball because of his decision in that moment to have courage, have belief, and also let go of the fear of getting it wrong. He was just like, yep, this is what we're going to do moving forward. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We can change it. But what we're doing now isn't working. So we might as well try something new. And that story was really inspiring for me because it's like, yeah, really resonating with what you're saying, that even if you're doing the same thing over and over again and if it's not working, try a new path and have the courage and the willingness to, get it wrong. But in the getting wrongness of it, you actually move closer towards getting it right.
Absolutely. That's exactly how it works. You got to give, it's like having the perfect hairdresser who's let's say 50 years old. I won't say my age because I'm a lot older, but let's say you've got a perfect seasoned hairdresser, he's 50. He's great on the one hand, but he's also got a problem, because if you try and get him to fit in a team, maybe he doesn't like the way other people are, right? So sometimes you're better off saying, well, and also he doesn't want to bend to new ways, fitting in with younger clients, etc. So you get someone else who's 25 and knows nothing, and you start training them. In a year or two, you can get them to fit in, because you can train in technique, but you can't train in attitude. And once you've got the wrong attitude, it's virtually impossible to shift it unless that person really, really suffers. Then he might change his attitude. But if you got the right attitude and you're 23, I can teach you anything. It's that openness, and the older generation have to have the willingness to see that, love in action, helping young people. I see myself as a vehicle. The salon it's just a vessel for people to come in and let's do something useful, right? It's not about me. I've always said, I have to become the least important person in the business. All the hairdressers or beauticians, or whether it's a colorist or even Oliver that I'm working with in my app, he's now more important than I am, because I've given him everything I've got, and he's brought youth and ease to it that I cannot bring. So you take things to a different level, right? So the young and the old, I think the tragedy about our modern society is there's this separation, whereas I see very much that, in other words, everyone is in it for them. The experienced hairdresser is in it for him. The younger person thinks the old hairdresser knows nothing. And so you get this clash, right? Oh, I never want to end up like him. And who does he think he is? Whereas in reality, the way you have to be is, the way I see it anyway, I like the analogy of the relay race. Have you ever heard this analogy?
Say it anyway. I'd love to hear it.
Well, it's the idea that if you really want society to improve, you have to be running forward, taking the baton, so to speak, forward, but you have to be looking back and seeing what to take and what not to take. Now, the reason that's important is because it makes one realize that you're not number one, you're number two. I'm number two. I can only ever be number two because I've got to look back. Back was number one, and the forward is number three. And then you become the next number two because you're looking back at me, right? And that's how we get the evolution. But it takes the need for respect of youth and the older generation. So we both have to see the value in who we are, okay? Because society is not going to improve if it's only left up to me. It can only improve because you now are going to step into my shoes and so on. And I've seen that as a very important part of my evolution as a person and people I've worked with. I think particularly after COVID, I've seen that this has been really, really important, that a lot of young people who thought they were on a path were actually just living in the noise. And then when the noise stopped, they realized they were completely lost and there was no one to pick them up. And so they just blamed the whole world. But in reality, it's the world of illusion that makes people think that they are already something when they're 20, whereas actually their head is just full of noise. And they haven't had the courage or been taught, as I was, to be prepared to throw yourself off a tree or fall over on a bike, scratch your knees and this, that and the other. I mean, God help a kid if he scratches his knees these days. It's ridiculous. So, how's he ever going to have the courage to cycle with no hands?
Yeah.
It sounds like a silly little thing, cycling down the road with no hands, looking behind you while you're cycling with no hands. But if you need the courage to do it, you actually don't have the courage to do it. It's only when you can do it without having to think about being courageous that it's actually that creative spontaneity, you see? Because that's when you're free to be creative in that moment.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I really resonate with everything you're saying. And when you were talking, like, I just really resonate with just the courage of, like, I didn't even think about moving to London. I kind of just did it. I was like, had the idea, take the action, this is where I'm going. And what's come up for me while you were saying that was this conception or this idea that a lot of young people I've witnessed, and even in myself, through schooling, through life, it's this relying on external conditions to then give us the happiness that we think that we need. Yeah. And for me, like, I really had this hit home lately where even if things aren't going the way that you seem, let's say you do fall off your bike and you scratch your knee, most people give up and go, oh, okay, well, obviously riding my bike is not for me. But we don't ride our bike for the sake of getting to the destination. Usually we ride the bike because we enjoy the journey along the way. And this, for me, like, really hit home. It's like, I don't do this podcast for the views or the sponsors or whatever at the end outcome. I do it because of the conversations that I have like this right now. It's like, this is magical. And the fact that by recording this, other people around the entire world get to hear you and they get to hear me and be a part of this energy. That is the magic that I want to share. And that is what I love so, so much. And this would show up in so many areas, not just like the podcast, but like why you go to the gym, why you do anything, why you run your salon. It's not for the end outcome at the end of the day, because if it is, then you're just constantly going to be chasing something, an external thing that can never actually make you internally happy. It's only until you just be present in the moment and realize, okay, well, why are you actually doing it? It doesn't matter if you get set back or you're winning, because your why is still ever present. And that is what come up for me when you were saying that.
Yeah. Well done you, Lisa, for having the courage to do that.
Thank you.
Because the difference was that you stopped waiting for permission to do things, and you took feeling from your heart and decided, I've got to go and do this. It may work out, it may not work out, but you took the initiative. You didn't wait for permission. And it is a bit like falling off the bike. As you say, one person falls off a bike, they never get back on. Another person gets back on and feels fearful. Can I tell you the approach I have?
What?
If I fall off my bike, I get back on it and I try and recreate what happened when I fell off and make sure I don't. I recreate the same stupid move, whatever it was that made me fall off, and I get to the edge and know exactly when to pull back so I don't fall off it.
Wow, that is powerful, yeah.
Well, it's amazing how you can become very ninja in your my wife calls me a ninja because, you know, something falls off the shelf and I've caught it before anyone has even seen it. I don't know how it happens, but it's probably that kind of training that you get into. Whereas other people, you know, something will fall off the shelf, it hits the ground, it makes a mess, and they go, oh, did I hear something? Come on, you've seen that with people, right? Yeah. So clearly there's been some background training that makes one person blind to what's happening right in front of them, and the other one sees something almost before it's happened. And we need a lot more people like that. And I really believe, from what I've seen in your generation, I've seen more 23 to 28-year-olds who have a great positive, I don't need permission, I'm going to have a go, actually, than my own children's generation, who are, let's say, 35 to 40. They are still hanging on back, waiting for permission. They're waiting for the right career. There's no such thing as a right career. Am I a hairdresser? I've done loads of things and I still have many things I want to do. I just happen to also do hairdressing. You know, some people may say, hey, why don't you run a restaurant? You love cooking. I can't think of anything worse. But that doesn't mean I have to stop loving cooking or wine or music. Just because I am not a classical guitarist doesn't mean that I can't love and play the classical guitar. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, of course.
It's like all these people in the world, they want to give you permission to, what makes you think you can design your own garden? Are you a landscape? It's a ridiculous idea, but it's because people pigeonhole themselves that they're waiting for permission or a certificate, or they pass an exam. Oh, I'm an expert now. Well, have you ever met an expert in anything? Because I haven't.
No.
I've met people with a little more expertise.
Yeah.
But there's no subject I've actually met someone who could really take me through and say, hey, this is an expert, as in he knows everything.
Yeah.
Look at the power of people like Elon Musk tearing apart the car industry. He had to tell Mercedes-Benz, hey, there are thousands of parts in your car that you could have got rid of 30 years ago. How did he find out? Because he slept on the floor for a whole year and scratched his head and thought, what's going on here? So we do need these early adopters. And the early adopter is the one who is prepared to stand on the edge and fall off the bike and get back on and say, next time that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to that relay as well. It's like being prepared to catch the baton from people who are behind you to then pass it on to the people that are in front of you, and to those people that are out there that potentially waiting for that career to find them, or waiting for that lover to come to them, or all of these things that they're waiting on, and maybe are feeling a bit stuck in fear. It's like, when are you going to give yourself permission to really fully be the bigness that is you? When are you fully going to give yourself the permission to be enough, rather than waiting for your parents, your family, your friends to say that you are? Because at the end of the day, they will reflect back to you. So if you believe that you're enough, the people around you will believe that too. And if you're not around these types of people, then it might be time to change your environment, change your room, change your car, change your place that you're living in, change the gym that you go to. Even just the simplest things could be just cleaning up your wardrobe, changing something that is outside of you. It's like, okay, you're giving yourself that permission that it's okay to let go of who you once were, so you can truly step into who you were born to be.
Yes. That is a great piece of advice. So let's explore how you're going to do that. Okay. So for you to be who you were born to be, you've got to get rid of a lot of the noise.
Yeah.
And there is no point selling yourself, I know I'm good enough. I think there's too much of that goes on. It's not about knowing you're good enough. It's just about the action of incremental steps towards that vision and being prepared to make one step at a time. Whereas young people say, I'm good enough. I should be playing for Chelsea. Well, have you practiced? You want to be a violinist? Ask a violinist how much practice you need. You need 3 hours every day, at least 6 days a week, and 1 day a week maybe you can practice just for 1 hour. But if you don't do that initially, how are you ever going to master the articulation in your brain, your heart, and your fingers? It's impossible. How can a youngster of 30 do a razor cut like me without cutting their hands?
Yeah.
It's impossible, because I've been doing it for 40 years every day. My hands are flying around and he's trying to do the razor cut without cutting himself. You see what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
The focus is all on the wrong stuff. And that, unfortunately, that analogy is, in a way, what happens if you believe you're good enough. In a way, you're like the guy with the razor trying to cut the hair, saying, I'm not going to cut myself. I'm not going to cut myself. You have to kind of let that flow and see the vision of the outcome.
Yeah.
You see? And then slowly, everything about you, your eyes, your heart, your feelings, your logic will all come together and slowly give you the right technique for everything you need in your life to get it right.
Yeah.
Okay? Let's take cooking as an example. You want to make a simple pasta sauce. How do you know how good the tomatoes are? You don't. Okay, so you put them in the pan, but you've read the instructions and it says do this for 15 minutes. Well, on one tomato, you're going to ruin it. On another, for one reason, another tomato, it's not going to happen, right? So you've got to prepare to propose yourself into, forget the recipe. This is about me and the tomato. My relationship is with this tomato. What's happening here? What's the outcome I want? How do I want it to taste? Get involved.
Yeah. And I really love, it's like almost a merging of those two ideas, because it's like you've got to believe you're enough to start, but then also at the same time, you've got to be willing to be open to learn. Yeah.
You know you're enough to start because you're standing there.
Exactly.
You know, God gave you this beautiful body and strength and a great mind and eyes and a nose. You know, you need your eyes, your nose and your ears if you want to cook. But you got to have the imagination of, what is it going to taste like at the end of this?
Yeah.
Don't blame the book after you taste it and say, oh, it tastes like crap, it was a bad recipe. What did you put in? And all of life is like that. What did you put in?
Yeah, and I think that like a metaphor of the artist with the clay, like that's making a sculpture, right? If it was just a sculpture that he just pictured and it was done straight to there, it wouldn't be as beautiful and as meaningful as actually the action of putting your hands in the clay and learning how to build the sculpture. That is actually the joy in the journey that it makes the sculpture have that beauty, I believe, is the process that it takes and the learning and everything else behind the scenes, the cooking, the ingredients, the process of learning about tomatoes. So when you have the pasta sauce at the end and you then get to share that with your community, with your family, that is that makes it so much better, I believe.
It's who you want to share it with. What experience do you want them to have? I mean, you used an interesting analogy of sculpture and you talked about building it. It's interesting, isn't it? Because there are definitely two ways of looking at sculpture. One is that you think you're building something. The other way of looking at it, and hair is exactly the same. It's not so much about what you cut off, it's about what you leave. So the other way of looking at sculpture is that you've got to see it finished in there, and the bits you're taking off are revealing what is in there. So where are you involved in that? You know, so you've almost got to have the conclusion before you start to a high enough degree. In other words, just like the pasta sauce, what's it going to taste like at the end, rather than blaming the tomato? What is in this piece of clay, rather than, oh, I made the nose too big.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't make the nose too big. You didn't have the vision in the first place, so you didn't cut enough out because you didn't see it. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
You can turn these things around so easily.
Of course, yeah.
But it takes the courage of inquiry. And a friend of mine always says, you know, curiosity is the number one thing you have to have. How do I look at and analyze? You know, if I look at you, I can't stop myself. I have to analyze everything about you, your smiley face, and why is it you've become so strong? And, you know, my brain is just going tick, 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 because that's what I've trained myself to do, to analyze everything. But if you have a young person who these days, I mean, you can't even look at someone and say, oh, they look great or they look pretty or whatever. The fear that has grown into people because of social media, not allowed to say anything, it's absurd. If we don't talk and share our views, how are we ever going to understand one another?
Yeah.
If we don't understand one another, you know, how can I ever understand, wow, here's an amazing young 23-year-old who is doing a fantastic job of trying to influence her friends and share with her friends her own journey with other people's journeys like my own. How would that happen if we weren't prepared to listen to one another?
Yeah, and connect. And it was almost linking it back to what you said before about the people that are open and taking the action from love and from that place of courage versus the ones that are stuck in the fear and then going, oh, well, why should I do that? Remember how we were talking about that before?
Yes, absolutely.
And so I'm curious to know, Valentino, you mentioned, I think either before we started this or at the start of this podcast, you opened this salon when you were 23.
Yeah.
So what got you to build that courage so young to then be able to invest all of your time over the years into this vision? Like, what did you see for yourself and your journey?
Okay, so interestingly, a question that's often asked of me, because I'm very much an ideas person. Oh, how did you come up with that idea? How did you come up with that? And it doesn't work like that. It's not like I sat down and tried to have an idea. In fact, my problem is trying to stop my brain having ideas, right?
I resonate with that one.
So the way it works really is more like this. So courage is something that you keep evolving about everything in the way you do your life, whether it's how you get on a bike and fall off it, or learn to cook a tomato sauce, right? So if you engage, when I decided to give up being a musician and said, okay, I'll have a go at this career of hairdressing, my inquiring mind is looking at it 100% and looking at what on earth are we going to do? And within a year of working with Tony and Guy that I work with, I was already working with the team in the school department. Even though I couldn't do things, I could teach because I could see things that they weren't seeing. And the reason I ended up with my own salon, and I can honestly say I'm pretty sure that if I'd stayed with Tony, and I would have made more money than owning my own business. But I couldn't stay with someone who had a different vision to me. And that is the key. You have to follow your own vision. And my vision was not aligned with their vision because their vision became commercial.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy, comb it like this, cut it like that, comb it like this, cut it like that. You teach a 23-year-old and suddenly he's a superstar stylist in 6 months. I mean, it's complete nonsense. There's certain things that I know hairdressers with 20 years experience simply can't do because they're going to need 30 years experience to be able to do a haircut like that, right? It's no different to being a guitarist at a certain level that has 30 years experience versus 10 or 20. You can't compare the two. But somehow in this modern world, we think that you can jump these big steps, without the journey. And so what actually inspired me to have a go at hairdressing is actually what made me have to leave working with a few businesses that I had worked with and start my own business. So I didn't choose it. It chose me. It drove me because the key thing that I wanted to do was help people discover themselves.
Wow.
For me. And, when I first started my salon, I called it Valentino Holistics because I was thinking of, well, how am I going to help people in this way? Anyway, slowly the evolution took me to the concept of the art of presence, because ultimately what I'm trying to do is give you the presence, physical presence, that you as a character have buried in there somewhere. How do I pull it out? And so when you work in a commercial salon, you simply can't work like that. Now, the whole world may still see me as a commercial salon like any other salon, but that's not what goes on in my head.
For those that are listening, when you step into this salon, it is a different feeling. Like, I have never experienced anything like it. Like, you can feel the energy when you walk into this space. So I just wanted to pop that in there as well.
Well, that's very kind of you. Over the years, I've worked with some lovely people, but it is very, very difficult to get someone who's passionate about hairdressing and wants to be a hairdresser to take it to the next level and say, well, look, I'm not going to teach you how to cut hair. You can cut hair, but why did you choose to cut her hair to this length? Why did you use one color all over her head when you can see that that's far too dark on her face? Oh, well, that's how it comes out. Well, that's how it comes out, but what are we trying to do for this person? Get rid of the white hair or make her look fantastic? We need both, right? So let's apply ourselves a little more. You know the person. It's not like you've only done their hair once. And this is the same with meeting someone. If I know, for example, that you like white wine and you don't like red, why am I going to order red wine? Because love is wanting for the other what they would want for themselves.
Yeah.
If you don't want that, why are you with this person? What's the difference if I'm serving you in a restaurant or in a hairdresser's or as a nurse? I must want for you what you would want for yourself. Otherwise, I'm failing you. If I fail you, I fail myself because I'm back to the why should I?
Yeah.
The indifference, you see. I'm not living as love in action. I'm living from a point of indifference.
Yeah.
I want everyone to respect me and look after me when I go to a bar or a restaurant, but I don't want to do it myself when someone comes to my own business. Come on. And this is the state I see the world is in. And people don't have the courage to recognize that they are like that. That's the biggest tragedy. They're so demanding when they stand at the bar in a pub, but the same guy who's demanding when he stands in a pub, when he's working in his, I don't know, let's say a parts shop. You walk in the parts shop, he doesn't even look at you. Just carries on walking up and down like that. And you think, wow, this guy is totally missed the point about what being human is. Because if you can't clock someone's eyes and say, hi, sorry, I'm really busy, I'll be with you in a second. Where's the humanity in that?
Yeah, it's like a disconnection.
Well, they're not connected. They're not connected, but they want others to connect with them when they go to the bar and want to order a beer. It's me, 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 you see? It gets back to the relay race. They're not in a relay race, they're in their own little race. And they're oblivious to the world around them. So they don't really contribute very much, And
it's like the world is your mirror, right? So if you're coming from that place, the world's going to reflect that back to you. But if you're open and you're courageous and you're willing to give out of a place of love and service to transform that other person because you see their light and you want to hold them in that, then that is what you will get in return back to you. It's just a mirror, I believe, anyway.
Well, you're right. Smile and the world smiles with you, cry and you cry alone. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? If you smile, I smile, we smile back, and then suddenly you're in giggles. It's infectious, isn't it? Why is it infectious? It's because that's how human beings work. We're a catalyst for one another, It's the energy that what do you call it? When you, it's like you put two bits of wood together and you put a match in between, they'll create a fire. But, if you only have one bit of wood, you put the match there all day, nothing's going to happen.
I truly believe that it's in spaces like this, a community like this, that everyone listening and tuning into conversations like this, the energy we create here can then be a catalyst, a ripple effect, for change to be seen in young people and the next generation, and to inspire people to move away from fear and more into love and courage. I believe that it's conversations like this that spark that energy and the catalyst for that ripple effect, which is really cool. And so I'm really curious, Valentino, what would be key major moments in your life where you have had to use your courage?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the courage is always there because I developed that early on enough in my life. So for me, it's more about protecting myself from my own courage, as being impetuous, throwing yourself in the deep end maybe when you shouldn't. So it's actually learning how to measure that courage, which I'm still trying to do. It's an ongoing thing.
I guess I asked that question for maybe people who are feeling a little bit stuck or feeling a bit fearful. They know what they need to do. They're a little bit worried to take that action. I would love to hear stories where maybe you've come across that fear in your life, but you decided to take the leap anyway and it worked out for you in the end.
Okay, let's take that back a step.
Yeah.
You just said they know what they need to do, but they don't have the courage to do it. Okay. So do they really want what they think they need to do? Do they really want what they think they need to do? If you got the strength and the courage to do what needs to be done is not what they want to do. Okay. So I've always said this for many years, make what you gotta do, make what you gotta do, be what you want to do. Doesn't work the other way around, because what do you want to do?
Are you genuinely asking me?
Yeah, I'm genuinely asking you. What do you want to do?
Well, for me, like my ultimate vision is to be speaking on stages all around the world, having like almost live podcasts, but a show where I speak to thousands of people, having guests like yourself and sharing just this inspiration for being present with life and how to find and tune into like how to make the most out of the time we have here.
Okay, let's hold that. So to inspire them to do that, what they have to do is to be present. They need to open their eyes and see what is present in their life, you see. So therefore, it's not an illusion over there. It's right here in front of them. So first thing is the action of wanting or doing good for what is present right now. The strength and the courage to do what needs to be done right now. The drain's blocked, shove your hand down it and pull it out, right? That's not what you want to do. It's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Okay? I have to spend an hour working on bills and things. It's not what I want to do. It's what I got to do. And if you can get out of the way in the morning, the first things like making your bed, you don't want to do it, but you got to do it. Get all the things that need to be done that you don't want to do but need to be done first. Then you kind of shrug your shoulder and say, hey, and something strange will present itself from all the little things that you had to do that you didn't want to do. Because that's the world you live in the world of all this stuff that needs to be done that you may not necessarily want to do. I mean, I iron my shirt. Do I really want to spend my time ironing? But I love it because I know it needs to be done. You see? So I employ myself. I don't do it with any form of resentment. I love ironing my shirt and I want it to look great.
Yeah, yeah. And when I first started this journey, I remember I never used to make my bed. And then when I started doing it every morning, I made it so that, okay, every time I make my bed, it's confirming back to me. So I made it a belief about it that every time I did it, that it meant I was successful because I was starting my day succeeding something, which was making my bed. So if I made my bed, it meant I was successful. And then every time I did something that I didn't really want to do, that you got to do, right? Yeah. I made it mean that I was successful because that is the vision. That is where I want to go. That is the vision of me standing on those stages, right, with those thousands of people. Yeah. If I continually affirming back to myself, even in paying the bills or the rent or whatever, that I'm successful because I can do that, then when I reach that goal, that end destination, that end journey, I'm going to thank those times, the parts that potentially I could have looked back on and been like, oh, I had to do that. But it's actually all of those things you can see have actually shaped you to who you are and given you the tools that were needed for the achievement of that thing that you truly do want.
Well done. That's brilliant. And get up in the morning, preparing yourself for the day, making your bed. They're all parts of that. This needs to be done, and then I can do what I want to do. But you'll find most of the unsuccessful people in life always avoid all those things they don't want to do. I give you an example of what I do in the morning. I don't get much time to go and do exercise because my head's got so many other things I want to do. But I realize I've got to do certain stretching things because of my job, right? But I have to brush my teeth, I have to wash my face and whatever. So guess what? I worked out a routine that I do while I'm brushing my teeth and while I'm in the shower.
That's great.
I'm actually in the gym.
Yeah. That's so creative.
Because I don't have time to go to the gym.
Yeah.
So I've turned my bathroom into my gym. And, I mean, you could film me one day. It would be hilarious. But, I do exercises while I'm brushing my teeth and while I'm in the shower.
Yeah.
So I don't need to go to the gym.
Yeah.
And so that's all part of building in, okay, I don't want to brush my teeth, but I must brush my teeth. Therefore, I learn to love brushing my teeth and do some exercise around it.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So all this stuff about, I really don't like doing that, you need to remove it. Any negative thought about anything, I really don't like to do that, so I don't, just remove it.
Yeah, I remember doing a podcast with Adam Hollyoak, so a few episodes back, and we spoke about the energy bucket, and I'm going to use it here today with you as well, right? So I see our energy in like a bucket. So the flow of the water, that is how much energy we do have. Now, our mission, our vision usually requires a lot of energy. But if you've got all these things that are poking holes in your bucket, such as you got to do the bills, you've got to vacuum the house, you've got to brush your teeth, right? You've got to go to the gym, or all these things that you know that you've got to do, but you're not doing them and you're avoiding them. These holes in your bucket are going to leak your energy, and all of a sudden this full bucket is going to be empty. And even the simplest thing, it could be just, I've got to call this person, I've got to text this person. You're not doing or replying to an email simply because your energy has gotten so low. So if you are this person, you're listening to this right now, and you're like, Elise, you're speaking to my soul. Just know that you've just got to sit yourself down and write a list, because most likely that list of things that you got to do isn't as big as it is in your head. So once you've got it down on paper, then start ticking them off one by one. Do the hardest thing first, and then let all the easy ones last. And you'll find that the more you get rid of all these things that have been draining your energy and these thoughts, the more you do that, the more energy you'll realize you'll start to have, because you're allowing your brain, your body, your energy space to replenish itself, because you're getting rid of the things that you got to do because you're doing them. And then it allows creativity to be able to flow because you have more energy to receive that.
That's absolutely spot on and great advice. I would just add one thing to that.
Yeah, go.
The holes of not doing it are not as bad as one other thing, which is the real devil. And it's the why should I? It's that rejection of it's something I don't want to do. Because apart from building up a whole picture of the things you don't want to do in life, therefore you avoid them, you do something else. You create a negative memory in your body about that thing, right? And I can give you a terrible example, but it is very, very real. A terrible example is people who've been badly bitten in a relationship, and they don't want to be alone. No one wants to be alone. Life's about sharing things, right? But you might be putting off the idea of, when am I going to start dating again? But it's that fear of, where was I going with this?
Badly bitten and the bucket.
Yeah. So the bucket is not so much that, I'm not going to do that. It's the fact that why should I do that if it's something I don't want to do? So the fear, the energy that you build up of the why should I and delaying it all is far worse than saying, I don't like this. So I don't like this, but the delaying it is far more dangerous, because that builds up an energy. And I've got lots of clients who are still single. They've been single for 20 years. And it's just because the fear of that thing that happened to them 20 years ago comes back into their mind as soon as they think of, maybe I should start dating again. Oh no, this happened last time.
It's like an anchored negative belief, like how I was saying, I make my bed, I'm successful, right? That's a positive anchored belief. But then obviously this person or if you're avoiding these things, you might have a negative belief attached to it. Maybe when you were younger, like your parents were like really strict and told you to do all these chores. So now that you're older and you have that flexibility and freedom, every time you got to do chores, you feel constricted and you feel like you're going back to that past memory. So the key here, I'm believing that is what you're saying is changing your beliefs about those things that you've got to do.
Exactly. And make it Mum's asked me to tidy my room and then I can go out. Great. Thank God she reminded me. Convert it into a positive. Thank God she reminded me. Get the room done. Go out. Have a great time. When you get home, guess what? Your room's looking great. These things don't go away, but they eat you and they make you a more and more negative person that touches every aspect of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, a good example of this, I'm going to use my own personal life for example. Like for me, in the past, I didn't put much effort into my appearance. I didn't wear jewelry, I didn't wear makeup, and I just kind of like put minimal effort into the way I presented myself at work, at school, just in life. It was only if I went on like a special occasion I would dress up. And now it's funny to look back because I put so much intention into what I wear every single day. And this, for me, I've noticed that it makes me feel so good. Like, even though it's a lot more time in the morning to do my makeup or do my hair or put jewelry on, etc., it's like when I go throughout my day, I feel amazing. And it's that energy that is what's going to help you be more creative, more confident, more courageous, or more like clarity around that next action step. Whereas if you're feeling terrible about yourself, which I used to because I was not putting in any effort into myself, therefore it's going to be a completely different energy that I'm going to go about my day from. So just even like a simple example like that for you guys listening at home, it's like, for me, even though I didn't appreciate at the time doing my makeup and taking that time to like just the way I present myself every day, now that I do that, it honestly changes my whole experience.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done that you've done that.
Yeah.
You just reminded me, when I was a kid, I didn't have blue suede shoes.
Yeah.
They were always leather. And funnily enough, I became so obsessed about polishing my shoes every day that I ended up learning more and more about how to polish shoes. So that in the end, I could say to someone, hey, how old do you think these shoes are? And they'd say, oh, they look brand new. I said, well, I've had them 10 years. And that's the sort of detail that you can attach to the kind of, you may think it's mundane, but actually the very fact that you're looking after things.
Like you said, ironing your shirt, right?
Everything. Why would I apply myself less to my shirt than to my food or to my work? You know? It's like the guy who doesn't want to apply himself when a customer walks into his business and he's walking up and down, ignoring him because, you know, I'm selling parts and I'm busy because the phone's ringing over there. Look at the person and say hello.
Yeah, that's probably how he treats his relationship back at home, right?
Exactly.
It's how what you do, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
How we are in the world, how we are with our families is how we are in the world. How we are in how we really deliver to other people. What we deliver to other people should be really the only expectation you have from others. But what I find more and more is that people expect so much more. I think there's the term narcissistic. Maybe that's what's going on in the world. You know, people want everything from everyone, but give as little as possible. It simply doesn't work that way. What made you decide that you care about others?
I think, like, for me, when I first started personal training, I was passionate about health and fitness, and people would always ask me for advice. So for me, I would just start sharing this advice and realize that I had a good, like, I was passionate about that. And it wasn't really until I switched more to mindfulness and mindset, hypnotherapy, and all the things that I do now, NLP, that is when I really discovered my passion for truly helping people. Because through personal training and nutrition, it was more so about business and more so about, okay, what can I do to succeed and get ahead early in life? And then when I switched to more like mindset and spirituality, that is when I discovered, okay, I'm getting all these clients and they're paying me all this money and it's great, but they're not getting the results that they say that they want. And that for me was not fulfilling. Fulfilling for me was when I would see a client not only change in their physicality, but also in their mindset, in their relationships. They start to like manifest in all sorts of areas of their life. Like we said before, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So when you start elevating physically, every other area of your life starts to feel and look good as well. And that is what I wanted to give to people, because I was starting to experience that in myself. Like, I had moments where I was like 10% body fat, but felt like shit. And then I have had moments where I was completely the opposite, but I've been feeling so abundant. And the key for me is like, okay, how can I, with myself, achieve in all of these areas of life or feel good in all these areas of life, and then be able to gift that experience to someone else, because it's like having the same meal your whole entire life, not realizing that there's anything else out there. And when you discover something new, you go, well, why have I been eating the same meal my entire life when I've just had this new experience and it's now my favorite dish? Most people don't realize that there is more happiness and more fulfillment out there that is just waiting for them to go out there and have the courage to try something new. And for me, that was the experience that I had. And honestly, it is such an honor to be able to share that with people on my podcast, my clients, watching them just elevate in their life and achieve things that they didn't even know were possible. Like that, all I can say is it's magic. And I don't know, it makes me warm and fuzzy and feels that like love, right? That's how I feel when I do my work. Yeah.
Great. Well, you're very, very good at it.
Thank you.
I have to say, you've learned a lot for your age, but it's because you're passionate.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's driven you. One point illuminates another. You learned about nutrition and then you realize, well, why do I want to feed myself well? Well, maybe I want to look a certain way. I want to feel a certain way. You asked me earlier about how I got to where I am. Many of the things that I've learned about, let's say, diet, posture, etc., are just from feeling pain. You have to sort out your diet so it works for you.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a sense of how do I want to feel, you have to work out your posture that works for you. Do I want to be a big, strong guy? I don't. I don't like feeling big and strong. I like feeling light and nimble.
Yeah.
So, that's me. God knows why that is, but it doesn't matter. If that's what you want, you have to visualize it and you have to take care of your body so that the body reflects how you're feeling and thinking,
It's the care aspect, that action from love, yeah?
Yeah, from love in action. And loving yourself begins with being conscious, being aware of your breath. As you know, you do mindfulness and things like that. And breath, your posture, your eating, your drinking, how you feel when you look at someone, how they make you feel, and how you make them feel. I'm not saying I'm very good at making people feel good, because I know I don't have a very smiley face, but the intention's there. So you have to begin with a good intention.
Your energy speaks for itself, like it's when you walk into a room and you can automatically sense how someone's feeling without saying a word or even kind of looking at their facial expression. You can tell through their eyes and just through their energy. We're all energetic beings, I believe, that have this sense that we can, our bodies are communicating to each other through our magnetic fields that surround us. So if you are around people that you seem to have a good vibe off and you have that feeling like you should talk to them, then do that. And that's how we are now here today, because even though I didn't even see your face, I could hear what you were talking about that day. And I just said, that guy is coming on my podcast because I really resonate. And I think what he has to say is really special. So, yeah.
Well, that's very kind of you. Well, Elisa, I think you're a very good example of a saying I once heard that was quite tricky to get my head around at the beginning, but I think it reflects you very, very well. And that is that you're a spiritual being on a human journey. You're not a human being on a spiritual journey. And I think that's very, very important, that if everyone could understand that it's the spirit in us, is that little spark that will be gone when we die, that is the bit that gives you the energy to do. And the most terrible sin for me is to waste that. If you don't implement that, the sooner you can implement that in life, the sooner you begin to live. Stop looking back, use that energy, and remember, we're on a human journey. We're all human beings in this together. So learn to serve one another as much as you can, whether it's your friend, whether they're younger or older, it doesn't matter. Try and do your best in your job, number one. I mean, if you don't do your job really well, who are you? You're lying to everyone. If you lie to yourself about, why am I doing this job for money? Well, actually you're not really doing the job, are you? Because unless you do it with love, you're not really doing the job.
I heard a quote, or I was reading a book and it had a quote in it the other day. I was like, oh, I've got a notes section on my phone that says words that slap you in the face. And this was one of them. And it was talking about if you're relying, I think it goes like, if you're relying on external situations, external circumstances to be your reason for being happy, then you're never going to experience true happiness, because you're always going to be waiting outside of you for that thing, when that experience, that love, can only be found when you sit internally with yourself and become self-aware, like you said.
Absolutely. Being happy never crosses my mind. Happiness is not a constant.
No.
Being content, you can be content. And when you're content, you'd be amazed how the world changes, because everything works. Even when it's not working, you know that that's how it works.
It's like flow.
It's acceptance. Acceptance is the cure. When you get into that, then, hey, you smile, I'm suddenly happy.
Yeah.
I get that moment. Then when you're sad, I'm suddenly not happy, right? Happiness is this thing that flows with the interaction of things that are going on around you, but it's not a constant state to be in.
Well, it's kind of like what you were saying before. I'd like to add on to it, right? When you experience those lows, you're not happy, the opposite of that, right? The pain. It's in that pain you discover aspects of yourself that you would have never knew about if you were happy all the time. And in those lows are usually birthed the biggest creations of what you're going to do next, or those biggest creative ideas of what is been calling you all along. And it sometimes we have to experience something other than happiness to be able to truly discover that. And yeah, like I totally am learning that there is a blessing in all of the emotions. Like we're having a human experience, right, for a reason, that we are humans and we experience all these emotions for a reason. And I truly believe it's in the learnings of the highs and the lows. It's where we have those creative outbursts, and that's where we get that relay where you're passing the baton on. And it's like, if it was like, if it wasn't in the pain of things, then maybe we wouldn't learn stuff, but that also in the wins you learn stuff as well. So that is one of the biggest lessons I'm learning definitely at the moment, for sure.
Well done.
Yeah.
And do you have a sense of the very fact that you said you want to get up and you make your bed in the morning? That's a sense of duty, isn't it? It's my duty to do this. That means you're very likely to have a sense of duty about everything you do all day long. If you get up in the morning and you expect the world to just come to you, and you have no sense of duty to iron a shirt, or brush your teeth, or make your bed, or say, I didn't eat well last night, I better have a good breakfast, you know? If that self-love is missing and the sense of duty towards yourself is missing, how on earth are you going to employ a sense of duty when you get to work?
Yes, I love that you said this. It's like, for those of you listening that are feeling lost and feeling like, oh, I don't know what to do next, it's like, well, how about start with having the sense of duty to show up for yourself? Because as soon as you do that, that clarity will come. But it is what is this lostness, this stuckness right now is just reflecting back to you your inability or your refusal to be in that sense of duty and love for yourself.
Engaged in the action of fulfilling that duty.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of people I've talked to over the years, a lot of young people and older people who, let's say older people who want to retire, they want to retire because they're fed up with that sense of duty. A lot of young people don't want to engage in, let's say, taking on that job, you know, rather than just wanting a salary. They want a salary, they don't really want the job, right? Oh, then I'll have the duty that, oh my God, it's my responsibility to do it. But none of these people are really living, because it's only when you really embrace the duty of, I don't know, let's just say get to work, like one of my staff Eva, she's amazing. She's never late. She always gets to work. She has a sense of duty. But you know what? The sense of duty she has is so great. It affects it's infectious on all her family, have a great positive outcome in their life because of this infectious sense of duty the mother has. Now, you know, if you have parents around, adults, teachers, people in a workplace who have no sense of duty, what on earth kind of, you know, infectious
energy transfer
are you going to give to young people if you're like that?
Yeah. You're going to be the change you want to see in the world.
That's it. You have to be it, you know, but it makes it very, very difficult because you may have parents who retired early and siblings who are lazy bums, you know. What do you see in the world to get that sense of duty and I must do this well, but not from a point of view of an imposition? Because a lot of people think that this duty is imposed on them. No, but you've got to say, aren't I lucky to have this opportunity to do that?
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it is amazing, isn't it? Here's let's call this a photographic studio. I could say to you, hey, you can come and use this anytime you like. A young guy, I won't bother telling you the name, who came from abroad, who had nothing. He said, really? I said, yeah, I've got a camera, lights, come in, take pictures whenever you like. Wow, this guy's crazy. He's going to let me use all this for free? Sure. But the people who are, let's say, live in this country, they have everything. They say they want to be a photographer. I said, well, I've got a studio. You can use my camera and lights whenever you like. Oh, really? Thanks, Val. Never turn up. So, you know, what is going on there? It's like you even give them the opportunity, but something, and it's the fear and the lack of inquiry and, oh my God, I finally got the camera and the lights. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Is missing.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas you come along and you grab all the bits you can and you say, I'm going to be a cinema photographer. I'm going to do it, you know, like my young Oliver, you know, I'm working with. I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter if it's a cheap camera or cheap lights, old lights, whatever, but I'm doing it. And then the other guy, I can't do it until I get a new camera.
Yeah.
I mean, which one is right? You know, I can tell you which one is right. It's not the guy waiting for the new camera, is it?
Yeah. I've absolutely loved talking with you today, Valentino. And I would love to just finish on this one last question for today. Are you ready?
Please, go ahead.
Amazing. So if you were to tune into your heart and listen to the first thing that comes to your mind, your own inner guidance for what my audience, the listeners today, need to hear from you in this podcast, what do they need to hear right now? What would that be? Doesn't have to be what we've said today, but it could be.
Well, it's an interesting question because I have a question that I give a number of my clients now because I'm now a grandfather, and we're all a little bit flummoxed about this question, but it is, what would I like to teach my grandsons that I see I fail to teach my children, you know? And I think that observation is very much about this running with the baton thing. And I think it is as early as possible to have the courage to do whatever presents itself in front of you so that it eliminates the noise of what is preventing you from doing it. Because wherever you are in the world, something is going to present itself to you that has never presented itself to me because of where you are, the situation you're in, and the family and the lover you're with or the teacher you're with. Whatever that is, go for it. Just go for it. Don't say no, say yes, and think about it later. Right? Think about it later because the thinking is not your own. Remember?
Yeah. Boom.
That's what I try and get my grandsons to do. In fact, my grandson last year, he was only 6 years old. He's up a tree, walking up and down a branch, and he couldn't get off. So he said, "Nonno," calls me Nonno. He says, "What am I going to do? How am I going to get off?" He said, "I've tried to go backwards. I can't get down." said, what am I going to do? I said, well, you're going to have to jump. You mean jump from here? I said, yes. Before I finished the word yes, he'd already leapt off the branch into my arms. And I caught him and I'm thinking, holy shit, I definitely taught this guy courage. He did it, Now, someone else would have said, nah, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
You see? And you just have to put yourself in a position as an adult to allow your children to jump off there and think, holy shit, thank God I had the strength to catch him or that I was there or whatever. And even if he fell, say, oh, sorry, darling, whatever it is, but make sure that they have the courage to have another go and another go and another go. But to never say, oh, hang on, let me get the step ladder and be careful, you're going to fall. There was a friend of my daughter's. I have a big magnolia tree in my garden. And my daughters, I taught them how to climb the tree when they were like 3 years old. This guy at 5, he went to put his foot on the tree because he could see my daughters at the top. And the father screamed, no! And the kid fell over. Even at 10, he never climbed that tree. So, what can I say? If something presents itself, if someone presents you with something that you think, some emotion takes you over and says, don't be ridiculous, you can't do this. Trust the guy who's given you the offer. Just do it.
Say yes.
Say yes. That's it. What can go wrong? All right, you might get it wrong. You try again. But if you walk away, the negative impact of the emotion that you will cultivate in you, your mind, body, and soul from walking away from that opportunity is unfathomable, and it'll affect you all your life.
Wow, that is so powerful. Thank you so much, Valentino, for today. You've been incredible, absolutely incredible. And if my audience are wanting to get in touch with you or find you, how can they do that? Are you on social media?
Well, the salon has an Instagram page, and I put on a few videos of how to massage your head and things like that. I'm not a very good social media person, but you're welcome to get through to me any way you like, any time at all. I'm always here.
I'll pop the links for the salon in the show notes. So if you ever need your hair done in London, then go check out the salon. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for being here today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Elisa. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
You too.
Thank you for being a part of the Generation Elevation community. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to leave a 5-star rating, written review, share, and tag me on Instagram at elise.riley. Until next time, keep loving, keep learning, and keep rising.